All right, guys. Here's the next Steve Radamas public service announcement, and I want to be very clear here. This is to get a conversation started. This is not a foolproof plan, but we need to look at how we're going to deal with coming out of quarantine, how we're going to deal with a reemergence of COVID-19. We're going to have to look at how we're going to deal with a COVID-20, a COVID-21. We're going to have to come up with better plans as a society on how to do this. So I'm calling this presentation the Quarantine Quagmire. So the QQ, the Quarantine Quagmire, for people who don't understand what that means, it basically means stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's no good solution. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. People are going to die either way. And so we don't really have that many good options. So we need to think through it, and we need to take assumptions, which I know is dangerous. Like you assume something, you make an ass out of you and me, is the saying. But we don't have much to go off here, so let's make some assumptions, and then let's check these with the virologists and the experts out there, the epidemiologists who can help us arrive at hard data or hard subsets of data. And I want to talk about a country that I'm very close to today, and this is Panama. For those who don't know, I lived right after I graduated law school from Chapel Hill, I moved to Panama, where my two kids were born. My kids are Panamanians. At one point, my wife and I were residents of Panama. 10 years of our life. Te quiero mucho, Panama. And they're an easy one to talk about because they're so small. The country's 4 million people. And I think by the time they've done a draconian lockdown option, which is what the Wuhan province did, by the time that they're this is an assumption here, by the time that they end their lockdown, 2,000 people are going to have been exposed and recovered from the coronavirus. But that means that 99.995% of the population have not been exposed to the coronavirus. Okay, now Panama has two economies. They have an economy based off tourism, and they have a local economy based off street sales. Like, this is a guy I made. He's the chicha vendor. Anyone in Panama who's been to Panama knows what this guy is. He sells a little juice for $1. Now, this guy's economy depends on this economy, meaning tourist and foreign investments. So they need tourists to come into the country to support this economy. So what does Panama do? Well, if they have two options. And these are the two options they have. Well, we think they have two options. Option one is they quarantine until a vaccine. Well, quarantine until a vaccine is not possible. The reason why is you'll have civil unrest. So civil unrest, like what's taking place, two countries I lived in, Bolivia and Peru, the civil unrest is already beginning. They have draconian lockdown effects. Their economies are weaker than Panama's. And these two countries are beginning to see civil unrest. That's hungry mouths, no law. It's that simple. People want to eat food. People want to live their lives. And they're beginning to fight, and it's going to get bad. These countries are in a rock and a hard place too. But let's go back to Panama. So option one is wait until the vaccine. That's not a good option. You'll have civil unrest. Option two is let the tourists back in, but then you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off, which basically means that the virus is going to come back in. So let's say on this plane is a group of June 1st or May 15th is a group of tourists on a bachelor party, and two of the guys are super spreaders of the coronavirus. They have it. They get on a plane. They infected the entire plane. Now, when they get off the plane, assuming what we know about the virus, none of them are showing symptoms. There's no fever. There's no cough. There's nothing. They go through the country. By the time they get on the plane and leave Panama, they've probably infected thousands of people. The hotel workers, the cleaners at the hotel, the restaurants, the waiters, the cooks, the dishwashers that they visited. And so they're going to leave Panama, and now you're going to have an outbreak. Because what? Because 99.995 of the population does not have the antibody. Okay, so now you're back to re-quarantining your population, and this is going to go on and on and on. If we think that option one and option two are the only options, well, I don't think they are. I think there's an option 3. And this is called green, yellow, red option. And I'm proposing it just as a way to get a conversation started. I am not the dictator of the world. I am not the president of the United States. I am not the president of Panama. But let's talk about an option like this as a building block, to address the quarantine quagmire problem. Assumptions. Assumption 1, healthy people survive. I think this is a pretty safe statement. I know the media out there wants you to highlight a 22-year-old that got the coronavirus, had a panic attack, and needed to get oxygen. But for the most part, 0 to 9-year-olds, 0 to 10-year-olds are 100% immune from this. To my knowledge, there's been 1 death, and hundreds of thousands of kids have probably been exposed. Same goes for the 10 to 20 age, the 20 to 30 age, the 30 to 40 age. What the media doesn't tell you when they're like, 15, 20% of people in the hospital are 20 to 44, they don't tell you if they're all 43 years old. They don't tell you if they're type 2 diabetics. They don't tell you if they're smokers. They don't tell you any of that. They just want to have a scary statistic that may not be accurate. And I've discussed that in previous videos. Show me where, Rudy Gobert or Marcus Smart, NBA basketball players that are extremely healthy end up in the hospital. Show me them in the hospital and then it'll be more like, oh wow, this is really dangerous. But to date, to my knowledge, most of the people in the hospital are pre-existing conditions, lifestyle choices, or elderly. So we're going to have to assume that healthy can survive. I don't know what statistic that is, but we're going to have to assume that healthy survive. We're going to have to assume that after 30 days, they don't carry the virus anymore, or very few do. It means their body received the virus and that they have the antibodies for it now. And then this is the assumption that, perdón Panamá, te quiero mucho, pero dudo. Discipline. Your society has to have discipline. Because if we split the society into 3 groups, green, red, yellow, and red, the green, after the quarantine, get to go out first. And you put armbands, un sentido, right here. An armband, a green armband, a yellow armband, a red armband. Everyone in society gets an armband. The green go out first. No mask, no nothing. We want you to be exposed. We want you to be exposed in your daily activity. When you're out on the Cinta Costera, when you're out running, when you're out jogging, when you're out working, when you're out stocking grocery shelves, whatever. We want you to be exposed. Now, you have to have the discipline to stay away from these 2. And these 2 have to have a discipline to stay in their house. So 30 days, this. Now, ending at those 30 days, you would hope most of these people are no longer carriers. Because they're healthy, their immune system survived it, and they had the discipline to stay away from these 2. Now, these people, especially the O positive, O negative blood, can start giving plasma and blood to the hospitals. Then you release the yellow. This is your 45 to 65, your younger smokers, your younger diabetics, your younger pre-existing conditions. You release this third of the population. Now, this third is going to start getting a little bit more sick. And they're going to need the hospital beds. But they're not going to be taken, the hospital beds are not going to be taken by these people, and they're not going to be taken by these people. These people are still home, and these people have been exposed and don't have the antibodies. But these people are now nurses and doctors that can work for these people. And so then you reintroduce these people for 30 days. There will be death. I am not saying this is a foolproof system. People will die. This is a war. In wars, soldiers die. Soldiers, second wave of soldiers, third wave of soldiers. Okay, now you have this populace out and about for 30 days. 60 days. 66% of your population has now been exposed or assumedly exposed to the virus, now has antibodies. Then you reintegrate this population. Now you can do this into subsets of population. You can do this into, 70 and above, 80 and above, 90 and above. You can do whatever you want with these things, but you have to make assumptions. And this is where I would talk to virologists and I would try to understand how immune are healthy people. Like, when I say immune, I'm saying they're not going to have adverse reactions. They're not going to need a hospital bed. They're not going to need to go on a respirator. They're not going to die. Like, it's very, very true that 99 point some X percentage of the population that is young and healthy will survive this, and most will probably not need a hospital bed. So you have to make this assumption, and you have to make the assumption too that after 30 days, the number of carriers is very low. And then option 3, discipline, guys. You have to separate into classes of people. Now, will this work? I don't know. But if you tell me these are the only two options, you're fucked. Because you're either going to have to re-quarantine and have civil unrest, or you're going to have to figure out a third option, or a fourth option, or a fifth option. So this is called the quarantine quagmire, guys, and this is what this is what's going to happen. And this is what I've been, I don't want to say preaching, but I've been saying is the law of unintended consequences. When we make decisions mainly through government, there are going to be unintended consequences. April 15th, Panama, you can't jump up and down and say, yay, we defeated the coronavirus, because you need your economy back. People need to eat. People need to feel like they have a reason to live. You can't just tell people to stay in their home and turn their houses into jails for the rest of their life. Are you going to wait for a vaccine, Panama? Are you going to wait? Or are you going to rip the Band-Aid off? Or are you going to think logically and use data and science to come up with a third option? And I use Panama because I love you, Panama. I really, really do, and I wish you the best. And I really hope that as the studies come out, the virus is defeated by your climate. But we're not certain that that's the case. So I wish there was something better to tell you, but you need to let people work. You need to figure out how to reintegrate society. You need to figure out how to have economies, or there will be a revolution, and it will be the cure of this disease, the quarantining of this disease will be exponentially worse than have we just let this option from the beginning take place in the world. If you don't believe me, stay tuned in, because in 6 months from now, you're going to be saying, damn, I wish we had listened to him sooner. Because this civil unrest is real. People will, hungry mouths know no law. Keep that in mind. So, we've obviously, as I've said in other podcasts, or as I have said in podcasts too, but if I've said in other videos, we've obviously came up with policy to protect the elderly of our society. Now we have to protect society and continue to protect the elderly. So, love you guys, wishing you the best. Un besito, Panamá. Un abrazo grande. Te quiero mucho. Ciao.